Every spring, almost without thinking about it, we begin the same journey north. The truck is loaded, and the maps are familiar. Before long, we're crossing open prairie, climbing mountain passes, and watching another year's worth of miles quietly disappear beneath the tires. People sometimes ask why we keep making the trip. It's a reasonable question. We've seen these roads before, we know the ferry schedule, we know where the mountain grades begin, we know where the best huckleberry shakes are found, and which stretches of highway seem permanently dedicated to road construction. For years, my answer was straightforward. We were going to our cabin, to explore Southeast Alaska, to watch whales, hike familiar trails, and spend another season in a place we've grown to love. All of those things are true, but after more than 20 years of making the same journey, I've come to realize they aren't the whole story. Like the great migrations that unfold across the natural world each year, we too find ourselves drawn towards familiar waters and familiar shores. Scientists understand a great deal about migration. They can map the routes of whales, explain how salmon return to the very streams where they were born, and track birds across continents with astonishing precision. Yet even after all we've learned, some part of the mystery remains. If the whales could speak, I wonder if they could explain why they return. Or would they simply say, it's time? I've asked myself the same question more than once. What keeps calling us north? Is it tradition, adventure, habit? Or is it something quieter, something that lives a little deeper than words? I've never found a complete answer, perhaps that's because some of the most important parts of life aren't fully explained. They're simply lived. This year, we'd like to try something different. Instead of simply sharing another trip to Alaska, we'd like to share what returning has taught us. Because somewhere along the way, this annual migration stopped being just another trip. It became a way of renewing something much quieter. Our relationship with this place, our relationship with the people who shared it with us, and perhaps, without fully realizing it, our relationship with ourselves. Every migration comes with a price. The salmon climb waterfalls, the whales cross thousands of miles of open ocean. Migrating birds battle storms. Our annual migration north has been a little less dramatic, usually. The interesting thing is that I rarely remember the easy trips. What I do remember are the breakdowns, the delays, the wrong turns, the ferry connections we almost missed. By the time we reach Alaska, the journey isn't over. In many ways, it's just beginning. Before the first ride of the season comes, another ritual, and that is preparation. Months have passed since the Sea-Doos last touched the water. So the oil's checked and safety gear inspected, batteries charged, charts updated, and dry suits aired out. Then inevitably, the electronics announce yet another software update. There's something ironic about preparing for wilderness by watching a progress bar, but modern adventure often begins with firmware. Those routines always remind me of Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. It was never really about motorcycles. It was about the care we bring to the things that matter. None of these tasks is remarkable by itself, but together they become an act of stewardship, a quiet reminder that the adventures we value most begin long before we ever leave the dock. Next, we move the jet skiff down to the water's edge, ready for another season on the water. The next job is delivering the ATVs to Kupreanof Island. We begin by getting our landing craft. It's moored in Petersburg Harbor. From there, we head south down Wrangell Narrows to our house. Here's where we're going to load the ATVs for the trip across to Kupreanof Island. It's the first of many runs that transform winter storage into another season of exploration. Over the years, Darcy has become remarkably skilled at loading the ATVs onto the landing craft. This day, though, tested that experience. We were working against a falling tide while adding a heavy load, exactly the conditions that can leave a boat high and dry. Thanks to careful positioning and an efficient load, we backed off the beach with just enough water to spare. We cross Wrangell Narrows and reach Kupreanof Island. Now it's time to do everything in reverse, literally. The ATV comes off the landing craft, and once again, Darcy takes the controls. What used to be a nerve-wracking maneuver has become second nature after years of experience. Now it's time to head back to Petersburg and top off the fuel tanks before the next leg of the journey. Every crew has an assigned duty, and apparently mine is standing in the rain holding the fuel nozzle. I don't remember volunteering for that position, but somehow it's become tradition. We make our way back to the middle harbor and settle the landing craft into her slip. It's another familiar routine, with lines tied, fenders adjusted, and engines quiet. One more piece of the season is now in place. For migratory animals, arrival marks the start of another season of work. The same is true for us. Reaching Alaska simply means it's time to begin preparing for the season ahead. With the sea-doos prepared, the ATVs delivered, and the jet skiff by the water's edge, another season is finally underway, but there is one more journey to make: the cabin. Or perhaps, more accurately, a place that had quietly continued without us. We drive to the trailhead about 8 miles out of town. The familiar trail disappeared into the forest exactly where it always had. I've walked this trail so many times that my feet seem to know it almost without asking. Even so, the first walk of every spring never feels routine. There's always a quiet sense of anticipation. Not because I wonder whether I'll remember the trail, but because I wonder how much the trail has changed since we last met. Eventually, the cabin comes into view. Every spring, I expect that first glimpse to bring reassurance. Instead, it usually brings curiosity. This winter had been especially generous with snow and had also developed strong opinions about the chimney. Chimney repairs can wait. Right now, the goal is simply to make the cabin livable again. I connect the backup propane tanks, then begin the familiar process of bringing the gas appliances back online after months of winter silence. This year, the water tanks survived the snow sliding off the roof, and they did not get crushed. I check their capacity and inspect the plumbing, relieved to find everything still intact and ready for another season. Last fall, I moved the solar panels out of the avalanche zone below the roof. Seeing them still standing after a record snow year was a welcome sight. We paused to enjoy a lunch that Darcy had packed for us, sitting on the deck and taking in the view. As always, the water drew my attention. Then my eyes dropped to the beach below, where the winter storms had deposited a new supply of driftwood. Around here, even the firewood arrives by sea. Seeing all those logs on the beach, I decided to leap into action and eat. The biggest surprise came from the electrical system. The new Blue Eddy setup I'd installed the previous year was completely unresponsive. Despite several attempts to revive it, it simply wouldn't wake up. Fortunately, one lesson Alaska has taught me is never to depend on a single system. I had left the original backup system ready to reconnect, and before long the lights were back on and the cabin was coming back to life once again. Darcy's mowing grass out here in the bush. I'm going to go down and do the logs now. And somehow we have to have a path through here. So I'm going to start. course, the tools of choice for moving logs are the pickaroon and the cant hook. Making a better trail, but look what I discovered. Where'd he go? It's a huge toad. It's huge. Alright, we sawed and clawed our way through, so we have a pathway from the beach up to the cabin. Lunch. Oops.
I just tightened it a little bit. just to make you feel good.
Just to play with my mind. Okay, here at the cabin. Getting it fired up for the summer. Ran into a problem with the electrical system. Now we're going to put the float in. You'll see out there we're extremely low tide. It's a -4 today. Got the Starlink put in, got the propane system running, and now we're going to go put the float in. Yesterday we were visited by our old friends, the rubber seals. When we show up in the spring, they come down here because they hear the noise. They want to check it out. Sometimes you can find crab and dig them out. That rock right there, when that gets exposed, it's about 3 feet of water out here. Let's go over here and see what the low tide has revealed. Oh, that's pretty beat up. So there's a starfish. Oh, there's a whale right out here. I put in right here. Now we're looking for the rope. Over here a little bit more, yeah. So you see this, there's a rock, and you see those 3 trees right there. So now we walk out in that line, see if we can find the rope. Oh, I think it's right here. Yes. Here's the ground tackle. Help. Start untangling it here. I think he's got his nose snipped. Oh, here's a crab right here. It's a process of molting, I think. Leave him alone, I guess. Alright, so here's the ground tackle. I don't see any major wear. So we got a helix anchor. It's about 6 feet into the sand. Then I've got a shackle, stainless steel, tied off so it can't loosen up. And then a line that goes through an eyelet so it doesn't wear through. And now we're gonna try to look for any problems with the rope as we clean it off. So there's a little loop that the line for the float goes into. It's hard to see because it's all covered up, but there's a shock absorber. It's a rubber. And I guess actually that's 2 of them. Rope through the loop. Alright, so here's the end loop of the line. And I've kind of roughly cleaned it off. And here's the 2 shock absorbers. These are rubber. And that way when you moor your boat up and waves hit, it's not so much of a jerk on the boat. Okay, let's tie this. Now we'll tie a bowline on there. It runs down here to the float, and then let's check the line and the ground tackle. And Yukon is giving up. It's too much work walking around. And then here's the other ground tackle. Everything looks good, so we're ready for the tide to come in. I'm gonna go grab. So anyway, Oh, he wants to play. He likes to run on the sand. Oh. Okay. Here comes Darcy. She decided to join us. Oh, he's going to play hard to get here. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Not bad for an 11-year-old dog. Hey, what are you doing there? As I sat on the deck that evening, watching tide rise beneath the cabin, I found myself thinking once again about migration. Every year, the whales leave these waters for Hawaii or Mexico. The salmon return to the streams where their lives began. Birds cross continents with an accuracy that still amazes us. They all leave and they all come back, and maybe we're not so different. Every spring, we begin preparing for the journey north. We check boats, pack equipment, and make the long trip back to this little corner of Alaska. I still wonder why. I think part of it is the place. Part of it is the adventure, but I think it's something deeper than either of those. Some places have a way of becoming part of us. They shape how we see the world and remind us of what matters. Returning isn't about escaping everyday life. It's about reconnecting with a part of ourselves that never really left. Before long, we'll point south again. The cabin will go quiet, the storms will return, and another winter will settle over the forest. But I already know something else. When the days begin to lengthen next spring, we'll feel that familiar pull once again. And we'll start preparing for the journey home.